Peter Schiff, he's a big name in the Liberty circles. I think he got probably his most acclaim about essentially predicting the mortgage bubble. There was, I guess it was in 2000. We'll let him talk about it. He knows it better than I do. Yeah, he's now. I got a white paper recently, and he's talking about the student loan bubble, and I think it's worth discussing it with him.
So let's bring him on. Peter.
Oh, hi. Thanks for having me on the show. And, I wrote a lot about the student loan bubble years ago. My book, The Real Crash, America's Coming Bankruptcy, I really went into how the government was inflating that bubble and what was going to happen when it popped. And, that was kind of before everybody started talking about it, because we hadn't really hit the, 1 trillion mark yet in total student loans. And now I think we're closing in on 1.4 trillion.
Wow. Yeah, and I think there's a little graph here in your white paper, and certainly whoever did the graphs in your white paper did a really great job with them.
Is this paper available on your website?
It's also available. Yeah, I posted on the link to his website on our Facebook page.
Okay, so it's up on our Facebook and Twitter
at facebook.freetalklive.com already. But in 2005, it was the total student loan debt was 0.3 is it trillion? Yeah, a trillion. 0.36 trillion. Now in 2013, it's 1.2, and you say, Peter, now it's nearing 1.4. That makes
well, maybe it's 1.3. Yeah, I'm getting.
Yeah.
Well,
it's 1.3, and soon will be 1.4.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's frightening.
Yeah, and this is really another example of government creating a problem and then attempting to solve it. But college, before the government got involved, college was not that big an expense. Kids could easily work their way through school. If your parents didn't have the money to pay your tuition, like my dad's parents didn't have any money, so he worked his way through school. He was a waiter over the summer. He worked at a resort, a lodge in the Catskills, I think, or someplace like that. And he worked for, the summer, and he made enough money to cover tuition, room, and board at UConn, University of Connecticut. And, almost all my dad's friends did the same thing. They all worked their way through college, and they graduated. They didn't have any debt. And what happened was a bunch of politicians tried to get students to vote for them by promising, hey, we'll guarantee loans so you can borrow money to go to college instead of working. And then when you graduate, you can just pay off your debt, and you'll get a better job because you'll have a degree. And so you'll just be able to pay off your debt after college, so you can just concentrate on college and not have to work.
That's the pitch.
And so they believed
Summers for them, those students must have been really great, right? Like, instead of working, they're like drinking and partying, right?
Well, yeah. And of course, when it first started off, tuition probably didn't rise that rapidly right away, right? But once the colleges caught on to this scam, right, the colleges realized, hey, wait a minute, we can raise our tuition as much as we want because the students aren't going to push back. They're just going to get the money from these loans. And so college began to get more expensive because the government was making these low interest rate loans available. And then it became a self-perpetuating spiral. As loans made college more expensive, the government would now increase the amount of the loans. And now the colleges would just keep increasing prices. And, it's like a dog trying to chase its tail, and it just kept spiraling out of control. And, now nobody works their way through college. They just graduate with a mortgage and no house.
It's crazy.
They have a huge debt. And of course, since the government has now encouraged so many people to go to college, the degree is worthless in the labor market because everybody's got one. Mm-hmm. When my dad went to college, probably in the 50s, maybe 1 out of 10 high school graduates went. So if you actually went to college, that said something about you. Today, it doesn't say anything. We got college grads driving cabs, waiting tables, ringing up cash registers. Just about everybody today has a college degree. So, the degree is worth nothing, but it costs a fortune to get it.
So what? I think a lot of people get that. You do believe that some people need to go to college, right? Like if you're going to be a doctor or a lawyer or an engineer or something, you pretty much have to go.
There are some people that should go to college, and certainly, like if you graduate at the top of your class, or an A student in high school, you're really academically driven, and you want to have some of these professions. But there are plenty of C students, D students that are going to college, and then when they get there, they're taking remedial English, remedial math, and then they major in some type of philosophy or sociology or something like that. And, I mean, this is a complete waste of time. I mean, if you're not a good student, if you're, and if you're, you're just, C student, even a B student, it's like, I mean, if you're not excelling at high school, why go to college? I mean, what's the point?
Yep.
And the thing is, we send all these kids to college who really do not benefit from it. They just have 4, 5, 6 years now of partying. And those are years that they could have been in the job market learning marketable skills.
Sure.
And instead, they're squandering their youth.
They'd be paid to learn those skills, too.
Oh, yeah, they'd have a job. Of course. Yeah. So by the time they were 22, 23, they could probably, make a decent living. Yep. Instead, now they graduate with a worthless degree and a pile of debt, and they can't do anything. So they have to stay and live with their parents.
The advice we give here on the air generally is if somebody's paying for you to go to college, you should go to college. But if nobody's paying, then you don't go. And don't beg your parents to go into debt for it either. I'm talking about a rich grandmother who firmly believes in college, or that you've done so well in school that you've gotten some kind of scholarship. Obviously, this advice couldn't work for everybody, but it works for enough of our listeners that it would. I think it's effective.
And you know
advice.
what? I would too. Most kids, look, if you're 18, you're graduating from high school, you really don't know what you're going to do. You don't have to necessarily go to college. You can start working. You can always go back to school when you're 20, 21, if you find out that you think college is something you really need. But a lot of people will find out that, they don't need that degree.
Yep.
And at least if you wait a little bit between high school and college, you might figure out what you're interested in. I mean, a lot of people start college. They have no idea what they want to study.
They change their major, I think, at least twice, typical college students.
Yeah, I mean, so you don't even know if you're going to need it, and and you can always even get a college degree. You can, go, study in the evenings while you're working. You don't have to go to a full-time college and spend 4 or 5 years or 6 years now. I mean, the 4-year degrees. Very few people now can even get a 4-year degree in 4 years. This is like a 5 or 6 year deal.
Here's what I'd like to know. I mean, I'm not a economics expert. What will cause this bubble to pop, right? Because you can't go bankrupt on a college loan, as I understand it. They have to, they're going to be saddled with that debt for their entire life. They can't sneak out from under that, right?
Well, what's causing it to pop is the realization that the college degree is not worth the price tag. They've bid the price of these degrees up so much that it's no longer justifiable, especially when most people who are graduating with college now are not doing a job that requires the degree that they have. When I said you have record numbers of college grads that are doing, menial labor, labor that you could do, even without a high school degree, let alone a college degree. If you want to watch a funny little video that I did, go to my YouTube channel, Schiff Report, and type in Peter Schiff College. And there's a video that I did. It's got a couple 100,000 views. I wish it had more. And it's a video of me walking down Bourbon Street with a microphone interviewing the people that work there. And these are people that are the bouncers at strip clubs and bartenders and pedicab drivers and people just taking out the trash. And I'm asking them, if they went to college and if they did, what their major is and what year they graduated and how much they borrowed. And everybody I talk to is a college grad in debt. And they're all doing menial jobs. I mean, jobs that, anybody could do,
Peter, stand by. You can continue with us, yes?
Yes.
All right, more with Peter Schiff here from Connecticut. I believe that is where we are joining, or he is joining us from. Our toll-free number, if you'd like to jump into the conversation on college loans, 855-450-FREE. It's Free Talk Live. This is Free Talk Live, the live Sunday edition. You can join us here on the radio waves. The toll-free number is 855-450-FREE. We've got Peter Schiff with us. Almost called him Irwin, but that's his dad. And we're actually going to talk about Irwin Schiff here tonight.
I've got Peter Schiff on the phone. I've got a bunch of things I want to talk to him about.
Yeah. So, and for our listeners who don't know who Irwin is, he is in prison with basically a life sentence because he was put in there, I believe, in his early 80s, if I'm recalling correctly. And I'm sure Peter will correct me if I'm wrong. And now he's not having a good time in there.
Not his early 80s, his mid 70s. I think maybe 75 because he's 86 now or 87.
Wow.
And so he got basically a 13-year sentence, and he's about 10 years into it.
Oh my God, I didn't even realize it'd been that long.
Unfortunately though, he was recently diagnosed with lung cancer, and the doctors in the prison are telling him that there's no cure, and he maybe has 6 months to live, maybe 12. They don't know for sure. But the problem is he probably doesn't have. He probably won't live long enough to see his release date.
Yeah,
so we're trying to get him out on this compassionate release, but of course the problem is everything takes so long with the government, even though they're trying to expedite it. This process is a bureaucratic nightmare,
which of course has really no compassion whatsoever.
Right, you're asking the government for compassion, and sadly, it seems
but you'd think that they could just let him out. Okay, the guy's got terminal cancer.
Right, it'd be cheaper for them, but they can't even do that.
They're not even trying to do anything. They're basically saying, well, there's nothing to do. And I'm like, well, why can't we just take you to a doctor here at maybe Yale, New Haven, and see somebody there and find out if there's something that you can do? I mean. And I don't know, I might have to pay the cost of some of it myself, but my dad is a vet. He does have benefits there, and he gets Medicare. So I don't know. I mean, the government might pay some of the costs regardless of that, but there might be some costs that I would be able to pay myself. But the thing is, they should just let him out. So in case there is something that can be done, maybe we need to do it now instead of wait, how many more months before they can expedite this release of a non-violent, tax offender who's already served 10 years in jail.
Right. They went after your dad. For people that don't know Irwin's name, they went after him basically for writing a book about not paying income tax.
Well, yeah, and he wrote a book, and he also encouraged people to read it and not to pay. But he never told people don't pay your taxes. He said, look, here's what I think the law is. Read it. Read my books. Talk to your accountant, get a copy of the Internal Revenue Code, take a look at these court cases I'm citing, do your own homework, and then make your own decision. Right. So and my dad said, look, I read all this information and concluded that the law didn't require me to pay taxes. I don't think it requires anybody to pay taxes. My dad would always say, look, just don't take my word for it. Don't just stop paying taxes because you heard me say so. I mean, research it yourself and make sure that you come to the same conclusion that I did. And a lot of people that my father exposed to the law, when they did research it, they did come to the same conclusion that my father did. That was the problem for the government. And the government did very little to try to disprove anything that my father said, because they basically ignored it. Because they really didn't have a way to combat it other than by saying, oh, it's illegal or you're going to end up in jail. Mm-hmm. But they never could specifically address the issues. Like my dad would always say, well, what section of the Internal Revenue Code creates a tax liability? What section requires you to file? And they can never point to these sections because they don't actually exist.
Right.
So they would just say, well, you have to file, you have to pay.
And of course, all of that doesn't help in front of a obedient jury who will do whatever it is the state demands.
Also, when they muzzle your defense attorney and say what they can say and what they can't say, that means you can only present the case that the government wants you to present.
Yeah, and look, a jury in a tax trial is really rigged because they won't allow anybody on the jury who's ever been audited. They won't allow any small business owners on the jury. It's almost all retired government workers, right? people on Social Security, and then what happens is the prosecution would say, if you acquit Irwin Schiff, you won't get your Social Security anymore because how is the government going to collect taxes? And the jury's a bunch of people living off of government pensions and Social Security. But I mean, can you imagine? I mean, how can you exclude from a tax case anybody that doesn't like the IRS, right? If you've been audited, if you run a small business, they won't let you on the jury. So It's not a jury of your peers, right? I mean, I think, so it's rigged. And
totally.
And anybody with any intelligence is not going to be on that jury. They won't let you on a jury when it's a tax crime. And from the government's perspective, also, it's very different. Like if you're your typical axe murderer, you're going to get a fair trial, right? I mean, the government is going to be able to, the Constitution is going to give you a fair trial, right? Because the worst case,
evidence. Yep.
Right. But the worst case scenario is the axe murderer goes free and he kills some more citizens, right? I mean, so the government doesn't really care, right? All right, so we let an axe murderer go. But if you're a tax protester, now the government doesn't want the tax protester acquitted. The government wants a conviction.
Yeah, they want to send a message.
Right, because he represents a threat to the government, not to the citizens. Sure. My father would always joke, it would always be, the people of the United States versus Irwin Schiff is how they describe it. But my father would say, no, it's the government of the United States versus the people of the United States. And my father thought he was representing the people, right? And it was the people of the United States versus the government of the United States. And of course, the government always won because they break the system.
Yeah.
Yeah, what a surprise. They win in their courts.
Yeah. All right. So is there anything anyone can do to support Irwin in jail? Send him things or?
Well, I don't know. What can actually be done at this point that would push it forward?
A petition? I mean,
yeah, look, I'm trying to get
the liberals love petitions.
Rand Paul's office has written a letter, or Senator Rand Paul. Also, I think a cousin of mine that lives in Connecticut had some connections with Rosa DeLauro, who's a congressman here in Haven, and she's friendly with Obama. But I don't know. I mean, anybody can do something to try to make some noise, to put some pressure on the prison system to, expedite this thing and let this old guy out of jail, before. And he's also going blind. That's part of the problem, is that his vision is, I'd like to have him, come out, and see his grandchildren while he can still see them,
Yeah.
Do they have an elderly wing in the prison? I mean, how many people are in there?
He's kind of in like a hospital prison. But it's really bad because for the first year or two, he was in reasonable proximity. We could visit him quite often. He was in New York or New Jersey. But ever since he turned 80, they moved him. He's either been in Indiana or now Texas. And so he's so far away, we rarely see him. They have him isolated because they claim, well, once you get to over 80, you have to be in these special prisons. But, there's not that many of them in the country, and they're far away. So, he doesn't really get any visitors.
Yeah,
very rarely,
I feel really lucky as an American how the American government keeps me safe from all those dangerous 80-year-olds they're keeping in prison.
Yep. I thought it was ridiculous is the prison told me that if they do release my dad into my custody, right, so he can come out and live with me in Connecticut, that I have to, get rid of all my firearms.
Oh,
because you're not allowed to have, an ex felon or whatever can't be, or someone on parole, whatever they release you. You can't be in jail. You can't have a firearm in the house. And I said, well, even if they're locked up in safes. And they said, "Yep, even if you have it in a safe, which I have guns in my place, but
and presumably they would be able to come by and search your house as well."
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm gonna have to. And they said not only can I have guns, I can't even have bullets.
Oh, God.
I can't even have because I have those too. I stocked up on those, so I have to figure out what to do with them. But
Peter,
stand
by.
Dad,
I would like to bring you back for more. We'll come back with more.
Right.
Peter Schiff. Our toll-free number is 855-450-FREE. If you want to join us here on Free Talk Live. We're going to bring John in Nevada on with Peter Schiff. John, you are on with Peter Schiff. Go ahead with your thoughts.
Hi. I called to ask Peter specifically about his father, and you guys did a great job of answering all my questions while I was waiting there on hold. So I would just like to say that, I have great respect for Irwin Schiff as a man of principle. I think he may have made some tactical errors, but the real criminals are the people who put him in jail, and I have great sympathy for him at this time, as I do for Peter.
Thank you.
Thanks for sharing that, John. Appreciate hearing from you tonight. Now, let's change gears back into the education discussion, specifically the bubble surrounding college tuition. Mark, you had a question about that.
Peter mentioned his father, and I thought it was worth asking some questions. But I wanted to know about the student loan bubble, and we've placed your white paper that you've recently created on our Facebook page, and people can go find it at facebook.freetalklive.com. The link to your website's right there. I want to know, now you predicted the mortgage loan or the mortgage bubble that occurred in like 2005 or whatever. Can you talk briefly about that?
Well, the bubble was inflating. The real estate bubble probably peaked out around 05, and then it finally burst in 07, 08, and set off the events that led to the financial crisis. But, I think we have a much bigger bubble. I mean, the bubble in student loans is, a small part of what's actually going on. I mean, The government has managed to reflate the housing bubble, the stock market bubble, but we have a bond market bubble, a dollar bubble, a consumer loan bubble. I mean, the whole U.S. economy is one gigantic bubble at this point. That's all we've got left. And that's why interest rates have been at 0% for almost 7 years, is because the Fed is desperately trying to keep the air in these bubbles. It doesn't want them to deflate. It doesn't want to pop them. That's why I don't believe they're actually planning on raising interest rates. I think they recognize that they cannot prick this bubble because, it will be much worse than the bursting of the housing bubble or the dot-com bubble. But, there is no avoiding this. I mean, the government has, created this disaster, and there's no way around it. I mean, they're just trying whatever they can to delay the inevitable. But, because they've succeeded in delaying it, they've just made it much, much worse. It's going to be a lot worse. So people really have to protect themselves from this more so than I think the past crises. And that means,
how do they do that?
Well, you ran some commercials for gold. I mean, owning gold is one way to protect yourself, but people should also diversify. They shouldn't only have gold, but they should definitely have some gold. But they should also invest internationally. We help people do that. I invest in gold. I've got my own company, shiftgold.com. There are other reputable dealers out there. Also, I have a brokerage firm, Euro Pacific Capital at europac.com. We help people buy stocks and bonds in Switzerland, New Zealand, Singapore,
Asia.
countries that I think are in better shape, where I think the assets have better value. The currencies are going to rise when the dollar sinks. And so there's a lot I think that's going to happen to really upend the status quo. And I think a lot of people are going to go broke in this next crisis. And, if you're not prepared for it, you could suffer that fate. So I think it's more important now, even I think, than with the dot-com bubble or the housing bubble, because this one is going to have much more profound consequences for typical Americans when it bursts. I think, we're going to see a big loss of value of the dollar, not just internationally, not just for tourists, going to Europe, but as Americans try to buy things here in America. Things that they used to be able to afford, I think, are going to be completely unaffordable for the vast majority of Americans.
Now, recently I saw a video where you were advocating if you've got a business, you should move it to Puerto Rico. Can you, touch on that?
Well, it depends on the business. I've moved one of my businesses to Puerto Rico, my asset management business, which used to be out in Newport Beach, California, and it's now in Dorado Beach in Puerto Rico. But if you have a business that can be done from Puerto Rico, or, if you want to work from Puerto Rico, there are some tremendous tax incentives that just began, in 2013. But basically, if you operate in the right type of business, you don't have to pay any U.S. income taxes, which is going to be true for anything. Anybody that moves to Puerto Rico, if you just earn money in Puerto Rico, you're exempt from U.S. taxes. That's by treaty with Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico has its own taxes, but if you operate within these couple of new acts that they've passed, then you're exempt from Puerto Rico taxes as well. So it really is the best tax haven, I think, out there, unless you're going to renounce your citizenship, which for some people could be very expensive.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
is.
we know somebody who's been going through that right now, and they have been raking him over the coals.
Yeah, and a lot of people might not want to renounce their citizenship for other reasons, but they don't want to pay taxes. So the middle ground is Puerto Rico. And I love it there. I own a condo there on the beach. And
yeah, I'm sure it's awful. Like during the winter when there's no snow on the ground and it's nice and warm, I bet it's terrible.
Yeah, it's a beautiful beach. It's probably maybe the most beautiful beach I've been on. I mean, every time I go someplace else that's not there, I just say, well, why aren't I at my condo? My condo is nicer. My beach is nicer. So it's a nice place. I do intend to ultimately live there. I'm probably going to move there maybe 5 years from now. I have personal family reasons why I'm not moving now. But if I was younger, if I was single, or if I wasn't divorced, because it's mainly my kid from my first marriage. But, if I was still married to, if my family was intact, all my kids, it would be easier for the whole family to pick up and move. But I can't do that just yet. And there are other reasons, things I like about being in Connecticut and being close to New York. But, I don't like paying taxes. That's a powerful incentive. Yeah.
No doubt about it. Hey, Peter, thanks for coming on. What's your website we can send folks over to?
Yeah, well, for people who are interested in just following me on the internet, I do my own podcast at shiftradio.com. I put up a lot of my own videos and my video blog, and of course you could check out the one I mentioned on the college. Is a college degree worth the cost? Yeah, but
we posted that on our Facebook page. Absolutely.
Yeah, you were watching that during one of the breaks, Mark.
It's hilarious.
It sounded really fun.
I mean, I'm not trying to be mean to these poor people that have these student loans and stuff, but you're going down Bourbon Street. It seemed like everybody you talked to, at least you edited out the people that didn't have college degrees. But
there were very few people didn't. I mean, almost everybody did. That was the reality. But a lot of people went to college and didn't graduate. I only wanted people who actually graduated. But it was rare to find somebody that didn't go. I mean, and the people that didn't go were happy that they didn't go. They were glad because they didn't waste their time or their money. But you saw some people had advanced degrees. They had master's degrees. But so you check out my YouTube channel, the Schiff Report. But my investment companies, Euro Pacific Capital. If you want me to help you with your stock portfolio, which I would encourage people to diversify internationally at Europac.com, and for precious metals, SchiffGold.com. So
thank you, Peter. Appreciate it, and thank you for coming on Free Talk Live here tonight. We appreciate it.
And happy Labor Day weekend to you and all of your listeners.
Very good, Peter Schiff. Thank you.